you. Thank you so much. And it's a pleasure and an honor to be in such great company instead of Derby Week. So, to begin, I'm going to give you a little bit of background. Louisville, Kentucky, and Louisville Metro is a city-county government that merged in 2002. We serve a population of 765,000 spread over 400 square miles. So like many cities with those kind of demographics, there's a real pressure to innovate. Budgets are staying level, but the demand for direct services continues to increase. So we've implemented a process innovation that we call the Civic Innovation Fund. We believe that by working with local governments, community foundations and local philanthropies can intravenously infuse innovation through new funding models and foster experimentation platforms. And you may be saying, wait a second, Grace, didn't you just say that there's a necessity for governments to innovate? Why then isn't government funding it? Well, to put it really simply, it's because the culture of government is incredibly risk averse. Now, it is well-intentioned, and it may even be for good reasons, right? There are processes in place to protect taxpayer funds, and those processes demand specificity. Now, this is no better reflected than how government does planning and budget, right? We have these 20-year plans that we invest in and have fixed annual budget cycles. We act like the future is a clear, straight path to the horizon, right? But we can't predict the future. And in reality, it's much more like this T intersection. How many of you have heard that in order for your innovation work to be funded, it needs to be based on evidence-based practices? I shudder when I hear those words. I'll grant you, there are plenty of innovations that are based on solid benchmarks and valid evidence-based practices. But sometimes innovation pushes on the boundaries of what we know, and government needs to be able to create new evidence. And instead, we're stuck. Innovation comes to complete dead stop, and oftentimes the projects that to get us started require smaller funds that are more difficult to obtain than larger funds. So now that I've thoroughly depressed everyone, how do we move forward? How can government ever get involved with innovation? We know experimentation is the key, and we need to be able to create the space to take risks, as well as develop a nimbleness and agility to respond to new challenges and opportunities. We need to begin to change the culture of government, to create an appetite for risk, and again, this nimbleness to respond to the dynamics in our communities. So, we've established a fiscal sponsorship agreement with our local community foundation of Louisville to be able to accelerate our innovation work. We believe that we both have things the other needs. Local philanthropies want their investments to have the impact of scale that cities are able to deliver, and yet they want to retain ownership of how those funds are used. Cities desperately need to innovate, and they know what their real needs are. Now, I'm not talking about an overly complicated process. The fiscal sponsorship agreement that's set up between the Community Foundation of Louisville and Louisville Metro government is 4 pages long. It describes the purpose of the fund. In our case, it's to invest in innovations that address the challenges facing residents in low-income neighborhoods. It also covers governance, how funds and contributions can be received, how one can make requests of disbursements, who approves those requests, and how the financial reporting is handled. Now, I know, you're thinking Louisville's got it all figured out and everything's perfect. Well, by no means is that true. The work is really nascent, and we could certainly do better in developing a tightly integrated strategic vision with our local community foundation. But we have an early valid use case that I want to share with you. As you heard in the intro, Louisville is a leader in our race-informed work. And through that work, we know that the digital divide reflects our social divide. Now, why is that important? When 90% of jobs require digital skills and the ability to move forward requires these skills, we need to make those investments in the community. Now, collectively, we've picked the Russell neighborhood to focus our efforts. Russell is directly west of our infamous 9th Street divide, which separates east from west, African American from the rest of the community. In the past, it was known as the Harlem of the South. Today, it's the home of Beecher Terrace, which is a 768-unit public housing complex. 14% of homes are vacant or abandoned, and 87% of the population is low or moderate income. So when we were going to create the city's very first public ultra-high-speed internet center, we knew it needed to be in Russell. And we picked the Louisville Central Community Center to be our partner because it was an existing community hub. Along with our City Accelerator funds, we raised matching funds from the PNC Foundation and Next Century Cities to be able to open this center. All told, the funds were $65,000. And we knew that it was important that the center not just be about public Wi-Fi or look like a typical community center. It needed to create an experience. But what does that experience look like? What would be really valuable and useful to the visitors of the center? And how would it impact the day-to-day operations of the Louisville Central Community Center? So when we opened the center in May of 2017 during National Digital Inclusion Week, we decided to run an experiment. We created a pop-up by renting furniture, and we tested 3 distinct spaces: a living room space, a high-top table workspace, and a cafe space before we decided to move forward making a larger investment to permanently outfit it. And what we discovered during the period of time that this ran, the experiment didn't cost very much money. In fact, it was $6,000 over 3 months. But we heard from visitors that they loved all 3 spaces. And we were able to demonstrate to the Louisville Central Community Center that this not only did not negatively impact their operations, it enhanced their facilities offerings. And so with a lot of confidence, Louisville Metro government was able to invest economic redevelopment funds to make the furniture permanent. Now, you may be asking me, what else has happened since it's opened? A particular event that we're incredibly proud of is a 3D printing academy for girls. This is run by Youth for Technology, who is primarily focused on increasing the educational opportunities for young people in Africa, but have recently been expanding their operations stateside. And these young women didn't just learn about 3D printing. They learned about how emerging technologies and coding could be used as tools to solve problems they actually care about, to develop business plans and how to market them. Now, again, you might be wondering, why would a digital inclusion initiative invest so much funds to create a physical space? Wouldn't it maybe make more sense for us to use those funds to deliver these skills trainings just purely digitally? And it's because even in our increasingly digital world, we know that physical spaces matter because you can't be what you can't see. These young women heard from engineers, developers, researchers, and entrepreneurs who look like them. And this took place in a space in their neighborhood. I cannot stress how powerful that is to hear from young women that they now know these career options are real for them. Central to our race-informed work is our desire to bridge East and West Louisville. And so we decided we would also ask visitors to the space to provide their home zip code. And we mapped it. So you can see that the pink dot represents the location of the center. And visitors not only come from every corner of the city, but even beyond. And many have told us that while this maybe was their first time visiting Russell, it will not be their last. Now we're building community. We create events that support social entrepreneurship, as well as get local corporate partners engaged in the work. So, what does the future of the Civic Innovation Fund look like? I think over the coming year, we'll be working with the Community Foundation of Louisville to strengthen and integrate more tightly our operations so that we can have a shared vision for where to make investments next. And Louisville Metro is committed to funding proven innovations at scale. So I encourage you to consider, maybe even steal this idea of creating your own Civic Innovation Fund to help build the community's trust and confidence in our ability to innovate together. Thank you very much.